times it was placed in Parliament but never adopted. Why? Because there is a reality of disproportionate power to certain sections in our society. And that has again played out. Because, you know, there's a saying in Hindu, dono haath mein laddu. This is dono haath mein laddu. You say you pass the bill, you say you're bringing women's reservation, but you assuage male superiority in chauvinism by saying, not now, you've still got 10 years of rule. So it's a patriarchal bargain, that's what I say.
But politically, would you still say it was true? Because a lot of people may not understand the census, the delimitation. For them, the question before them is, but Modi ji did do it. Nobody else did it.
अगर मोदी जी ने किया तो why 2024 we are not getting it? If you had passed the bill which we passed in 2010, as part of the Common Minimum Program, we ensured the passage of a bill which would have been in operation in 2014 and in all the state assembly elections. So Modi ji ne kiya Amrit Kaal 25 साल और महिला काल और 10 साल. We are not going to get the benefit of this bill. And when it will come, that is the law. There is a clause in this bill, section 5(1). It is not being implemented in the next couple of elections. I think that's well, I won't use the word fraud, but I will say it's a great disappointment and a betrayal of women of India. That's one part. The other part, what is the bill called? Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam. Vandan Adhiniyam. We worship Nari Shakti. That is the bill. We don't want worship. We know what happens with worship. We don't want worship. We don't want patriarchal Manuvadi worship. We fought for this bill. You, all of you here, you fought for it. Women in panchayats, they fought for it. They broke banners for this. And today we are being told Nari Shakti Vandan. भैया हिंदुस्तान की औरत कहती है बंधन से मुझे बचाओ, मुझे बंधन नहीं, मुझे साथ बैठना है.
On a very unrelated note, one problem is that we have to learn all these bills which use really tough Hindi words, including the criminal bills which have a collection of Hindi words, right? Other than everything else, there's also the Hindi imposition through these bills. So I want to ask something. What was the BJP thinking of, do you believe, by really trying to postpone the entire thing? What is their stake also, like many other political parties, of ensuring that too many women do not come into politics? Is it just to safeguard politics as a patriarchal, as a place where men hold all the power?
See, I mean, that's one way of looking at it, which is not incorrect. I think it's deeper than that. Because today, the reality is that parliamentary politics, and particularly big national parties who are in the game of forming governments, today politics has become an issue of money. It has become a huge lever of power and vested interests. And now, in that situation, to take away 180 seats from men and those who are in power, it's not easy. I tell you, at one level, theoretically, politically, organizationally, we in the left have always been committed and fought for the bill. There's no compromise on that. But if you ask me, and many people ask me, Mohammed, you all are fighting for the bill, but in your own party, why you are not giving one-third reservation? That's a very relevant question. So how do we answer that question? The reality is there are so many constituencies in India which are going to be women reserved, in which people have worked really hard. So on the one level you have power and corruption and that. On the other level you have people who've really worked for the people, who have a popular base. So for a political party who is happy with the work of their MP, to take away that seat and say, now we are going to give it to a woman, it's not an easy thing. But if it becomes a law, like has happened in panchayats and local bodies, I can tell you, even at panchayat and local bodies, we always face this problem. Comrade, why put up this person? They are not going to win. That's an argument. But when the seat is legally reserved, there's no subjective thing that, okay, in this seat we'll take away this male person and put a woman. There's no subjective issue there. It becomes a law and it has to be abided by. So there are many levels of this. But in answer to your question, why has it taken so long, or why is the BJP right from the beginning, I mean, I think they may have, publicly changed the position, but I can tell you when I was in Parliament in 2010, and there was hangama going on and people were shouting and saying, we are not going to pass the bill. Where I was sitting, one MP got up in the table behind me and smashed a glass, cut his hand and started dripping blood in the Parliament, saying, "Mera khoon jayega, lekin bill nahi hoga." This is what was happening. And at that time, the BJP leaders, I don't want to take their names, but who were leaders at that time in Parliament, they encouraged it. And they told the chairman, Dr. Hamid Ansari, that you can't have the bill passed when the House is not in order. Same thing happened in Lok Sabha. But he was so strong. He said those who are going to discuss, they can stay, those who are not can go out. But from the back, there were lots of people.
So you're saying they never had the intent?
No intent. And that's why you can see today, And if you have an intent, why 10 years from now? It's just a simple question. They couldn't answer that question,
There was a famous picture, right, a few years ago, all the women MPs standing in line, holding hands. Was that rare show of solidarity, of all of you working together, Sushma Swaraj and all of you together? How do you look at that today, when you see that picture today?
At that time when we were in Parliament, there were certain issues on which, in spite of our deep differences, we could unite. And we gave space and respect to each other. I believe that on certain issues which are important for a change in social thinking, you should unite. And as far as women in India are concerned, I feel so sad that today when female wrestlers are beaten up outside Parliament, when Bilkis Banu's killers are released, there's not a single leader, a woman leader of the ruling party, either in the ministry or outside, who says a single word. So the kind of polarization which has come, I think it has damaged our cause. So, I think we have to fight all the more for that.
I see a lot of young people in the audience, especially women. How would you explain to them why political empowerment of women is so important? Because there are often people who ask questions like, why do you want to reserve seats? Why can't women fight for it and get it? Why is the word reservation itself with a negative connotation, whether it's for Dalits, whether it's for women, people think, why give reservation? But how important is the political empowerment of women in a society? And why is reservation that one marker which will enable you to politically empower women?
Well, I mean, if you look at the global experience, I mean, all over the globe today, if you look at the latest figures that the United Nations has put out, it's really quite shocking. There's been very little progress across the world. In fact, the 3 countries which have over 50% women, one is Rwanda, one is Cuba, and one is a Scandinavian country. And each of those countries has a mechanism to constitutionally or legally ensure a certain number of women in parliament. Now in Nepal they have passed a bill. 1/3 reservation of women is going on. In the entire, except for Sri Lanka, which is little less than us, in all the other Indian subcontinental countries, India is last. Why? Because it's a fact that today in politics, social relations linked to patriarchy prevail. So you can't say, okay, everywhere there is a patriarchal environment linked to class, linked to the lack of social change, and I would say linked to the way that capitalism has used caste and gender and women's subordination to fatten itself on profits of our labor. So many issues are there. But globally and in India, it has been shown that unless governments take a constitutional and legal step, it's very difficult to shake up the world. You shake up the world through struggle. And it's totally wrong to think that reservation has come from the top. No, we fought for it. Dalits have fought for the right. It's because we don't give equality. Therefore, when a society is unequal, you can't expect that inequality to go with a magic wand of Amrit Kal. Amrit Kal is something which sticks in my throat because it's Vish Kal as far as I'm concerned. Anyway,
It's become part of the vocabulary, unfortunately. So I have a connected question. So we speak about horizontal and vertical reservation also when it comes to women's. One of the other criticism is that the women's reservation bill does not have vertical reservation. It does not reserve seats specifically for women from OBC castes, from SC/ST castes. So how do you look at that? Do you believe that this bill should have also, that the women's reservation bill should also look at vertical reservation?
I think it's a very strong case for vertical and horizontal reservation. There's no doubt about it. However, we do have constitutional reservations for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, and therefore within scheduled caste and scheduled tribe seats there's going to be reservation for women. In the panchayats we do have in many states reservation for OBCs. So within that reservation for OBCs, you have reservation for women OBCs, women's seats. So what we have been arguing is that if OBCs as a caste are considered socially and economically backward, then there should be a demand for reservation for OBCs in politics, like you have in the educational institutions, like you have, but that's not the case. That's not the case. So, constitutionally, you cannot do it. You have to have horizontal and vertical reservation based on the same reality of caste-based reservation.
Okay, so I think we've had enough questions on the reservation bill itself, but I want to just move on to women in politics, which of course includes the CPIM and many liberal parties. You did touch upon it, but what I want to specifically ask is what stops, for example, parties like the CPIM, DMK, AIDMK, from having more women, not just while giving tickets for elections, but even in their local, for example, a area secretary, a district secretary, a state secretary. Why are we not seeing more women come? Is it because the structures of political parties do not encourage it?
Well, in my party, I joined my party in 1970. 1971, I was 23 years old. And if I look at the journey of my party from 1971 to 2023, and if I look at the journey of women in my party in this period, I find it, objectively speaking, an inspiring journey, because the issue of women as a specific group in a patriarchal society like India has resulted today in my party making constitutional amendments to ensure a larger representation for women in party committees. Now, my party is not a missed call party, I mean, मैंने phone किया, my number is registered, and I become a member of a party. No, in the CPM, as you know, to join the CPM, there's quite a lot of struggle and sacrifice involved. But unfortunately, at the time of recruitment, although we are seeing more and more women coming into struggle, fighting for their rights, facing police lathis, fighting, what we have found is the next step of recruitment in the party, there is a lag. Now, in the last party conference we had national, we set a target of 25% women's membership. In many states, the membership is only 11%, 12%. So obviously my party has identified that in many of the areas, we are not identifying and recognizing women cadre to be able to come into the party. Women do have problems. There are domestic issues, there are time issues. What time is a branch meeting held? If it's held late at night, naturally a woman would find it difficult that she's not. So what I'm trying to say is that women in the party and the journey of the party together has led to a situation when I can, without hesitation, say that the identification of all the trends which prevent equal party membership between women and men is being identified, is being addressed, and it's not left to subjective assessments. Now there's a constitutional provision.
So you were speaking about women entering the party, where you said there was an analysis and the party found that there are places where there are 11 to 20% of women coming, right? But what about Bonscare and the party? Another criticism with CPIM and many other parties face, we will ask about CPIM too, is that women do not then climb up the ranks. Often the question asked is how many women are there in the Politburo, or how many women are there in the state secretariat. So are you saying the problem is because women are not entering enough, therefore they're also not progressing up the ladder?
I don't think so at all. Because, I mean, for example, today we have 2 women members of the Politburo. But it's not just a question of women and men. Who are the people who are in the Politburo, on the Central Committee? They are fighters. They come from different communities. They come from different states. And they have gone through a process into the leadership. The leadership of a Communist Party, and women are very much part of that leadership. That leadership has certain specific qualities which women do have. So as I said, when the base gets expanded, you will find, as is happening even in a state like Kerala today, where we had no local committee secretaries women, we had very few branch secretaries women. Now as more and more women are coming into the party, you find posts from the branch level to the state committee and the district committee level. You find a remarkable change. And this is recognition of, some people say, you are a woman, the party is not doing this. Look at what that report about me said. I don't know if you've read that report.
Of course, we have to come to that. In fact, yesterday I was thinking, what questions will I ask Brinda Karat for 1 hour on just the women's reservation bill? And Malayalam Manorama came out with the story that you wrote in the book that you were only looked as the wife of Prakash Karat by the party. So, what did you actually write in the book, and where did that quote, where did the story go wrong?
I live in Delhi now, I'd much rather live in Kerala, frankly. This is God's own country, and for me it's also a country and a state which is much more sympathetic to women and their struggle. Anyway, so I live in Delhi, and the media in Delhi, there's a wonderful independent journalist called Ravish Kumar, and he has coined the phrase, Godi media. You know that phrase?
Yes. Which is the media which is basically sitting on the lap. Godi. Lap media. Yeah.
So that is happening there. But I never realized that such a literate and cultured state like Canada has some sections of the media who can be so unethical as to manufacture a quote and put it in quotation marks. It's crazy. So you put in quotation marks, they made me a wife. Who made me a wife? Next line. The party never accepted my independent identity. Something like that.
Yes.
First of all, I am as much the party as anybody else. We are all that much the party as anybody else. There's no party making me do something or me making anybody do something. I am. And every woman and every party member is as much the CPIM as anybody else. So the first point, they made me the party, is such ignorance about my party. Apart from that, what I have actually written in the book, I want to share with you. May I?
Please, yes.
So what I've said is that when you're working at the local level or at the district level or at the state level, you're not coming under that much scrutiny. It's limited. At that time, Prakash was the secretary of the Delhi party. So my work, my opinions, and I had many opinions, and whatever I expressed, it was totally separate. It was never linked to whatever I did with Prakash. But in a society like India, when you get higher responsibilities at the national level or in the organization, then the scrutiny for a woman is much more than the scrutiny for a man. It's nothing to do with the party. It's to do with social trends which look at women in politics and then they say, she's in the central committee, why? Or he's not in the central committee, why? Because she or he is the wife of a leader or the wife of a comrade of a leader. So these trends are there in society and it's also there in different organizations. So what I said was, these trends are being fought, and I myself it never bothered me. I mean, it did bother me when it was printed in the media that she's the wife or she is so-and-so linked to a male politician. Certainly it affects you. But it's not a party. It's a social thinking which exists. And I was saying that because the party is aware of it. And I want young women also to be aware and strong and to be able to fight such trends. But the way that it was portrayed in the Kerala media, nowhere else, the headline there totally destroyed what I said, what my own experience has been, and the measures that the party has taken to address the issues which we were talking about.
So you're saying the book was actually talking about how society sometimes would hold you more responsible. What do you write about the party? I mean, I'm sure everybody's curious now as to also what do you write about the party, how it looks at women.
No, this book is only about 10 years of my experience in Delhi during the emergency.
Oh, okay.
It's just, I was called Rita in those days.
So I was reading
during the emergency, so it's just a 10-year journey of a young woman.
Okay. I was reading another book which is written by Newsclick editor probably, Keeping Up the Good Fight. Probably is now in jail because the government decided to go after Newsclick. So in the book there is an anecdote which he talks about his partner Ashoka. So Probir and Ashoka are the CPI members, and then one of them have to choose to be a full-time member because somebody has to provide for the family, right? So Mr. Karat said that Ashoka should become the full-time member and Probir can do a job. At that time, to take that decision, how do you look at that now?
No, I think that was an absolutely correct decision, and it just shows exactly what I'm saying, that to call the party that made me, it's such rubbish, because that's not the culture in the party. In fact, my book is also dedicated, one of the dedications is to Ashoka, because we work so closely together. And when we talk about the media, I just want to share that I met Probir in jail last week, and he really is fighting the good fight. And he is put in jail under a very black law, the UAPA. The case, as the best lawyers in Delhi have said, has nothing to it. And yet an intellectual, a scientist, a person who is so progressive-minded is now in jail. And I think a place like the Kerala Literacy Festival is certainly a platform to express solidarity with him.
Yes, solidarity with Probir, with Newsclick and so many others who are going, I think, through what the state is putting them through. We have to go to questions because 20 minutes also for questions, but because there are so many young people here and women, I mean, I was a young woman once upon a time and I thought I will enter politics. But I didn't. I became a journalist, but I still think I can enter politics. What would you like?
It's always open for you.
Yes, thanks.
Here's an open offer. No missed calls. Hard work.
Sure. So, one thing which a lot of young people ask me is that is it safe for young women to become journalists? If the same question was asked to you, is it safe for young women to enter politics? And is it really possible if you do not have the privilege of money, caste, family in many parties, right? How difficult is it for someone to enter politics?
When you talk about politics, usually outside the left, politics is usually associated with electoral politics. Can I get a ticket? Can I fight an election? That's usually the way to look at politics nowadays. And in that kind of electoral politics, that person will find no place in the left. Because the left's politics is a politics of social change, of radical ideas and radical goals. But in spite of being objectively at so much more risk when you're fighting the status quo, In fact, I would say for a woman, the left is the safest place. As far as women's security is concerned, as far as sensitivity is concerned, as far as space is concerned, undoubtedly in my experience, the left would be the safest place for a woman to be. If a woman wants to join electoral and different type of politics, then money is definitely a big consideration, and you have to be prepared to compromise on ideology. Then you have to be totally self-centered, and you have to do what is required to get space.
So we will open up for questions. If people have questions, please put your hands up and yeah.
Greetings, dear comrade. I want to ask about that. It's a very
Translate.
okay. Our protection, etc. But still we didn't get it fully, and we all are struggling. We take strikes against it for our rights, etc. But anytime do you think about that our narrations, our involvement in the society wants to change to something else?
എനിക്ക് ചോദ്യം മനസ്സിലായില്ല.
അതായത് ഭരണഘടനയുണ്ട്, ഒരു 250 പേജോളം വരുന്ന ഭരണഘടനയുണ്ട് നമ്മുടെ അവകാശങ്ങളെ കുറിച്ച്, റൈറ്റ്സിനെ കുറിച്ചൊക്കെ പറയുന്നത്. പക്ഷേ നമുക്ക് ഇവിടുത്തെ ചില മനുഷ്യർക്ക് ഇപ്പോഴും ജീവിക്കാൻ പറ്റാത്ത അവസ്ഥയുണ്ട്. അതിന് അവർക്ക് ജീവിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതേപോലെ ഓക്കെ ആവാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട്, നല്ല ലൈഫ് ഉണ്ടാവാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് സ്ട്രഗിൾസ് ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്, സ്ട്രൈക്സ് ഉണ്ടായിട്ടുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ ആ സ്ട്രൈക്സോ സ്ട്രഗിൾസോ അതിന്റെ റിസൾട്ട് കാണിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. ഓക്കെ, അപ്പം സ്ട്രഗിൾസ് അത് റിസൾട്ട് കാണിക്കാത്തതുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മുടെ ആ പറച്ചിൽ, അതായത് ആ സ്ട്രൈക്സിന്റെ രീതി മാറ്റേണ്ടതായിട്ടുണ്ടോ എന്ന് ഗവൺമെന്റ് തോന്നിയിട്ടുണ്ടോ?
So basically he's asking, the constitution guarantees rights, freedom to people, but despite that a lot of people in India have to fight for their rights, but they do not see end results. So is the problem the way we are fighting for it? Should we change the way we fight for our rights?
I mean, that's a very interesting question. And it depends, yes. Sometimes we have to change the way that we approach the people, the way we organize our struggles. But today, basically, the Constitution itself is under attack, very severely under attack. So the rights that we take for granted today, if we don't fight for those rights, in whichever form or method we want to use, tomorrow those rights will be taken away from us. That is the reality of the attack on democracy in the Constitution today.
But is there, before we go to the next question, I have two questions for you. One is there a fatigue in society, do you believe? Like there are a lot of people who protested for one thing or two things or five things, and then suddenly they're fatigued. They cannot go on because how many things will we protest about?
No, I don't think so. Because today every protest is really deeply linked to the survival of India as we love India, and as we know India, and as we want India to be. It's our own survival. So how can you get fatigued when you think about your own survival? You can't. Every breath you take is your survival. You'll fight for every breath. It's like that. Today our country is under assault. And if we don't recognize that, and we don't see from where and which forces it's coming, it's not a tsunami which just comes and hits you. It's happening day by day, incrementally. The state being used in the most blatant way to change our constitution, to change the character of our republic. So I don't think there's any luxury of fatigue for any of us.
There's no luxury of fatigue. Yes, next question.
Comrade, my question is, are the right-wing political parties in our country taking the female voters in our country for granted? If so, how are they getting away with it? Also, I want you to put in your perspective on it.
No, it's a fact today that women as a constituency are being seen as an important. Earlier, say about 20, 30 years ago, there was a glancing reference at best. But today, women are considered very important electoral constituencies. And right-wing politics addresses it in different ways. And I think one of the most fundamental changes which has come is the question of a new kind of identity politics based on religion, and to develop a core identity of a woman belonging to a particular religion, committed to a particular worship, committed to a particular ritual, committed to a particular ceremony. And that is happening day in and day out. And that development of a core constituency based on the religious belief of women is something, according to me, which is a deep insult to the beliefs, religious beliefs of women, and to a kind of toxic politics which breeds hatred.
I want to continue with his question. Is it also mirage that they have created that we are working for women's rights? Along with that, there is also a division of us versus them. For example, the triple talaq law which was brought to show that one community is being oppressed and we are the saviors. We come there as the saviors. There's a lot of juxtaposition of us versus them, right?
See, but it starts from a reality. There is a reality that in different communities, in the name of religious tradition, there is injustice against women of a community. For example, the practice of triple talaq, which was struck down by the Supreme Court, which held that in many Islamic countries, arbitrary talaq was never allowed. In most countries, it is not a practice at all. That is arbitrary triple talaq. Talaq, then 3 months of grace, then again talaq, and so you have a process of conciliation, you have a process of counseling. So that is a method of divorce which is there across the world, which women have welcomed, and women find it easier to deal with that. But here in India it was not so. But it was a reality that it was happening. It's Muslim women who went to the court. It's Muslim women who have fought it. And it's Muslim women went to the court struck it down. Now once the court strikes it down, it's down. What did this government do? It brought a bill, and I want all of us to understand this. It brought a bill which was totally unnecessary after the court has struck it down. It brought a bill which demonized Muslim men without any protection, either in the form of allowances or in the form of domestic sphere or in the form of guarantee of a place in the home. Nothing. There was not a word for the Muslim woman's rights in a marriage where teen talaq. And now we are getting so many cases in which women are coming and saying this law is not helping us. So the narration that we are the saviors has 2 points. One, it is a complete lie, because how can you be a savior when you're demonizing one section of the community? 2, you are not the savior because Muslim women themselves went to court. If anybody is the savior, it's the Supreme Court which ruled. And thirdly, why aren't you worried about other women? 8,000 women are burnt to death for dowry every year. Why aren't you bothered about that? Why don't you speak and say, you are having, what was that? marriage events outside India, have it in India. But what about dowry? You've never said a word about dowry. Why? Why aren't you speaking about dowry? Why aren't you speaking about domestic violence? If a woman is beaten up in her home, many of my friends here may not like me saying this, but the fact of the matter is, if a woman is beaten up in the home, for centuries we've said this is a private matter. Women fought against it and said the Constitution of India does not stop at the bedroom door. If I'm equal outside, you can't treat me as an inferior being and beat me up or sexually abuse me because you have the license of a marriage certificate. But have you ever heard the government spokesman say a single word about it? 9 years in power. Please multiply an average of 6,000 to 7,000 women burnt every year. 63 to 70,000 women have been killed. Have you heard a single word about those who speak about being saviors of Muslim women? What crime have those women committed who are burnt to death? Because they are Hindu, you won't speak about them. I ask you, have you heard a single statement? Have you heard the Home Minister ever speak and say, stop this practice of dowry? It is an abomination. No. ये सब बातें हैं.
Okay, the next
Sorry, I
question.
get a bit angry about this.
It's like 3 men have asked questions. And surprisingly, we are speaking about women's reservation bill. Yes, we'll come to next. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I have 2 questions. May I ask them one by one?
Yes, please. But keep it short.
Okay, I'll do that. So first of all, we all support women's reservation. There's no denial about that. We are on that side. But I'd like to put it as a kind of an alternative suggestion or idea that why can't we make it mandatory for all registered political parties to have at least 30 or 40 or 50, whatever it is, percentage of people in their candidate list for the election instead of reserving the constituencies. So that is question number 1. I don't know whether that has been taken into account or not, that I don't know.
No, but there have been parties which have done it, like Naveen Patnaik, Central
Yeah, why can't we
Congress.
make it mandatory?
Let me answer that. Because there was a big debate about this and we also considered. So then you give women all the seats when you can't win.
Okay.
All the losing seats will be given to women. Secondly, in many countries, you have proportionate representation. That is, the percentage of votes that any political party gets. They have a list of candidates. It's called the check-off system. So if you get, say, 5% votes, then you get 2 MPs. And in that system, certainly, you can have, in a system of proportionate representation, definitely you can have women reserved in party lists. But without proportionate representation, it won't work.
Okay. My next question is about this kind of a general question. We talk a lot about men, being against the right of women or whatever it is. But we find growing number of women having, so much of male chauvinistic ideas or patriarchal ideas within themselves. How are you going to tackle that?
That's very true. And as far as I believe, and the organizations I work with believe, that it is ideology, not biology. It's not biology which determines your politics. It's not biology which determines whether, as a woman, I'm going to accept female feticide. It's ideology. So, patriarchy affects both men and women. And when we fight patriarchy, certainly men are the main instruments of it because they have the power in a patriarchal society, but certainly the patriarchal notions and practices in which women are not only sometimes complicit, but practitioners, we fight it. Our movements fight that. So for us, it's not men versus women at all. We wouldn't have got so many good laws and won so many battles without the support of right-thinking men. When I say right-thinking, I mean progressive-thinking men. All the bills which were passed and all our great social reformers. So for us, it has never been a narrow paradigm of men versus women.
To just add to that, when we say we fight patriarchy, it's not a fight against men who are in the patriarchal system. We understand that women are very much part of patriarchy. And it's a continuous exercise to make women realize that these thoughts are patriarchal. From every dowry story in Kerala that you see, right, you do see the women part of the patriarchal system. Because she was talking about dowry deaths, and Kerala has a high number of that. Even education cannot fight with patriarchy that much, and that is very evident from the Kerala example. Yes, she has a question, yes.
Hi. So my question is related to the political participation of women, and so I just wanted to share my concern as to, not concern, as a person, as a female who does participate in protests regularly. Whenever I see that it's a protest against the Bilkis Banu rape is being let out, or in case of the Israel-Palestine issue, if you participate in protests, especially being a woman, I feel like there's a lot more at stake than when compared to a man. Because for me, my career gives me independence, gives me mobility, and gives me my voice. So when, especially given the present political climate where UAPA is being charged just randomly on people, whoever is going against the government, I feel like for a woman it's more difficult to voice her opinions compared to a man who it's equally difficult for a man as well, but the man can easily come back home and still be equal. Like they can still go out, be free, move around. But for me, for a female, there's much more to lose. But we still, of course, make a choice to be there at the protest, but it's a bigger price to pay than for a man is what I want to say. And if you would comment on that, that'd be great.
Well, in a way that's true, because when you live in an unequal society, and we all agree that men and women are not equal in India, so certainly when some very big political development occurs, there will be a bigger impact of that on the person who is unequal. Could be a Dalit, it could be a Muslim. I mean, for example, if you talk of women, women also are not a homogeneous community. Within women, there are Muslim women, there are Dalit women, there are Adivasi women, there are poor women, there are rich women, there are women who are rich who can get past all this because they have the will to do so, although at some level they will also feel patriarchal pressure within their domestic sphere. So women also are not a homogeneous community. However, being women in a patriarchal society, it is true that when you challenge the status quo, you do have high stakes. There's no doubt about it. You have high stakes to win, and you have equally that much to lose. So, when a woman makes that sacrifice and comes into public life, it does require much more courage. It does require much more commitment. And that's why I always salute young women who today are coming out and challenging the status quo and linking it, knowing that when they do so, they are going to affect their own lives. But that's the reality, my dear. And you have to weigh that with your own conscience. You came out for Bilkis Banu. At that time itself, something could have happened. but you felt it. You couldn't bear it. You are coming out for Palestine. The world is witnessing the worst genocide we have ever seen. So if we're silent, what about the women there? So you've given the answer yourself, that you are out in protest knowing that you have more to lose. So I salute you for that.
We have to wrap up, but I just want one small comment from you. We started with the Women's Reservation Bill and how it's virtual reality because it talks about census and delimitation. Since we are sitting in the southern part of India, is this one conversation we should have more and more about what delimitation is going to do to the southern part of India, to the southern states?
I think it's very important. It has been raised by many states because imagine you have now 20 seats from Kerala in the Lok Sabha. You have the best social indicators. You want to do even better, but you do have the best. But what we have seen today, if it's going to be according to population, there are going to be around 730 members of parliament. And if Kerala, because the population is voluntarily controlled or stationary or declining, we're going to lose political representation. The same with Tamil Nadu. So these are very, very serious issues which we have to put on the political agenda, and this should become a people's issue, because if we don't get adequate representation, Kerala and its history of and tradition of such progressive ideas will be very much marginalized. We have to fight that. You fight it here, and we'll fight it all over for you.
So many more battles ahead of us. Thank you very much everyone for joining this session.
Just one more thing. I just want to congratulate Ravi DC Books and Publishers for this absolutely unique and wonderful festival. I want to say to you, I've been to so many, but really, this is something quite unique, and I think it's the environment of Kerala which makes it so. So here's a shout out to Kerala, and here's a shout out to Ravi DC.
Thank you so much, speakers.